This is the takedown video for the Delta plate. So on the back you'll see there's a number of screws. The screw order you want to take them out in is these three. They are actually longer. They hold the Delta triangle on. So once you do that, you have that. And then you want to remove the side screws first. These 4 screws are the encasement screws for the internal components here. So take the back lid off. We already removed those. And those screws are actually quite shorter. So you'll be able to tell which is what based off the length. So just remember the Delta triangle has the longer screws, the case screws are the shorter ones. So when you remove all the screws, this is what you see inside. Here's the back, the rear plate. So you see a little plus sign right there. That is the location point for the little tiny spring for the little lock assembly. So we have 2 springs internally. They're both stainless steel. So we'll pull those out. Put them here. So every once in a while, if you start to hear a squeak happen, it comes from the factory that there is a silicone lubricant in here on these ramps that interfaces with the front side of the lock. Over here, these little bumps. So that way it stays nice and quiet. And here's all the components. So here's the reassembly. Want to make sure that that little tab is within that channel, because that's what allows it to move back and forth. Put the spring in there. You want to hold this down because it will shoot not very far. The lock goes in one way only. Put the spring in right there so it sits up. And then you want to keep holding this down. Move your thumbs out of the way and then take it so the top side sits on here, and then rock it back to where it hits the shelf, and then place it down and just make sure it holds down. When you put the screws back, start in a diagonal pattern, much like changing a tire. One here, one there. Make sure you secure them down. These are special screws that are made to go into plastic. So don't swap them out with any other kind of screw. We'll have a parts kit available on the website that will have extra screws and kit assemblies for internal components. So you'll start with those 2, you move to those 2, you go around the outside, and then what you'll do is you'll flip the unit over. There's location points for the Delta triangle, the bead and load bearing. You should feel it kind of nest in there. Flip it back over, use the longer screws now, put them in, start them by hand. If you're using a drill, otherwise hand tighten them so they're nice and snug, and then just a little bit more, because this does take a lot of weight, a lot of abuse, so you want to make sure it's nice and tight. If you overdo it, these screws and their helix pattern and the triangle formation that they're in will eventually strip out the plastic if you over tighten them. So make sure you don't.